Hi, I'm Linda O'Donnell. Nice to hippie. I'm so glad that you're here. This is our 5 must-have scenes for your romance. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to share my screen. So one of the great things, if this is your first time in Fictionary, you will find out that we are all about kindness here in this community. We are kind to each other in the community. We give each other um, encouragement. We give each other answers to questions. And we also like to be kind to our readers because we are here working on our books. We are taking classes. We are using the software. We're making all of our work so much better, and our readers are going to appreciate that. And the other thing is, remember to be kind to yourself because writing, let's face it, it is not easy. So if you give yourself a little bit of grace, that is a great thing. All right, so let me start my timer so I know how long I'm going here and admit a couple more people. There we go. So, yes, already kind of said who I was, but I am Linda O'Donnell. I'm a certified fictionary story coach editor and an instructor, and I write romance because I love happy endings. And I am the co author of the upcoming Secrets to Writing a Romance, written with our beloved CEO and founder of Fictionary, Christina Stanley, who is brilliant and also very kind. And I guess I have to say that because she's here, but I would say that anyway. Okay, so you've got a romance story to tell. So one of the questions I want to ask you is, are you sure you're writing a romance? We're going to go over what the genre guidelines are for a romance. We're going to make sure that you know who your protagonist is. And then this really cool thing that we've got here in Fictionary is when we find out what the goal is for our protagonist, we create something called a skeleton blurb. And I'm going to talk about that and how it's going to be a game changer for you. Then we'll move on to the main part of this session, which is to identify the 5 critical scenes for your story. We call them story arc scenes. You may have heard them called um, plot points or beats, but we call them story arc scenes. And when you see what they are, that's going to give you so much structure to your story. It's going to be a game changer for you. Okay, so let's talk about high level romance genres guidelines. The first thing is your story should be about 2 characters finding love. Pretty basic. However, it gets a little more complicated. You can't just have them meet and then ride off into the sunset. There's no story there. We've got to give them some obstacles. Maybe they have conflicting goals. Maybe they're both vying to become the CEO of a company. Maybe they come from feuding families. Maybe one has a bakery and the other one opens another bakery right across the street. Or maybe the male love interest works for a company that wants to tear down the entire town and turn it into an industrial complex. That could be a big, big obstacle. Or maybe it's something a little less dramatic. Maybe they just have people in their lives that are causing problems. Maybe one of them has a mother who thinks that the love interest isn't good enough for their child. Or maybe one of them has an ex that's kind of coming in and causing trouble. You've got any number of ways to kind of throw obstacles at your love interest. And that's what makes the story really interesting because they have to overcome this stuff. The next thing you need to do is find a reason why the couple spends time together. If they don't spend time together, how are they going to get to know each other and fall in love? Typically, we call this forced proximity. And there's lots of tried and true ways to accomplish this. Maybe they one of them has inherited a house and they need the other one's help to transform it into a bread and breakfast. Or maybe even more complicated, somebody left them both the house and they have to figure out how to work together to either restore the house, or maybe one of them wants to keep it and the other one wants to sell it. Maybe they need to work together to save the local school and they join forces to put on the school play. You can come up with any kind of situation. It just has to put them together, allow them to get to know each other. But here is the real this is a deal breaker. You've got to have a happy ending. HEA, happily ever after, or HFN, happy for now. Remember that they have to have that happy ending or it's not a romance. You can have a beautiful love story, but if it ends in a bittersweet or tragic way, they don't end up together. Oh, I'm sorry, but my duty is I have to go and be in the, Foreign Legion. Sorry. Or maybe one of them dies. That's not a romance. There's beautiful stories, but if you don't have that happy ending, you better not market your book as a romance because you'll have a lot of angry people. We love our happy endings, and that's what we're looking for. Here is a really quick view of the scenes that we're about to talk about. I'm going to go over each of them individually, but this just gives you an idea of how we pace out, these scenes. And so once you get those done, you already going to have a really good core to your story. So why do we care about story arc scenes? Well, think about if you're building a house. You can't put the roof on first. Can't even put the walls up first, or the windows or the doors. You have to have that structure. When you see a house being built and you see those studs, that's the structure of the house. Well, it's exactly the same way with a story. The story arc scenes are like the framework of your story. Without it, you might have some really interesting characters, but maybe they're not doing anything. Or maybe you've got this great plot, but well, maybe it's not so great. Maybe it's kind of meandering all over because we don't have that plan in place, that structure. And maybe we've got this beautiful setting, but it's kind of meaningless unless we've got the structure and they all work together. So, again, why are these important? If you don't have these 5 scenes, and you're going to see this as we move forward, then you don't have structure. And then you might not have a story. This is going to help you determine whether you've actually got a story worth writing. If you don't have a story, then you're not going to have any readers. So let's make sure you do. Now, I teach this 6-week romance class here in the Fictionary community. So, those of you who have taken it before, you know that I ask this question every time. What's the most common question that people outlining or editing have about romance? And it is dun, 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 who is our protagonist? Well, the protagonist, it might be a single protagonist or a combined. And you're like going, wait a minute, what is all this? One thing that many writers assume that because they're writing a romance and it's a story of 2 people falling in love, that it is automatically a combined protagonist. But that is not always the case. Sometimes it's a single protagonist because the characters have different goals or different consequences. Sure, they both want to find love, and that is essentially the same stakes. But in a romance, the protagonist has this internal goal. They have something that they need to overcome. Maybe they've been betrayed. Maybe they've like spent a lifetime watching their parents fight all the time. So they're just down on love. Or they've maybe experienced some kind of trauma in their past and their ability to embrace emotions is damaged. Or they believe they're not worthy. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. They've got this thing that they've got to overcome. So I've put a sample here of a what I would call a goal. We've got Mary, who's our protagonist. She must overcome her distrust of relationships. Otherwise, she'll never have her HEA moment with John. Well, John, he's got a slightly different situation. He must accept that he's worthy of love. Otherwise, he won't have his HEA moment. So you can see they both want to get to that HEA moment, but they both have something different to overcome. So when you look at your 2 protag or your 2 characters, if they have the same thing that they need to overcome, then you can combine them. If not, don't worry. Now, this is not the same as point of view. Point of view, so let's drop back to protagonist. Protagonist is the character whose story we're telling. This is the one who has the most to win or lose, and we're focusing on their story. Now, even though Mary might be our protagonist, we can still have scenes that we see from John's point of view. What is point of view, you ask? Well, in a scene, it's the character who's telling the story at that time. It's what they're seeing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They're the ones it's like they've got the camera. So in a lot of stories, you've got a single protagonist, but one chapter might be told from Mary's point of view and the next one from John's. But since they have those different goals, remember she's overcoming this distrust and he's a kind of overcoming this the self-worth thing. It's a different that they have different goals. Mary's got the bigger story, so she's our protagonist. Now, you may decide to tell your whole story from a single point of view, and boy, that's great because you know that's your protagonist. So hopefully as you go through this, you're going to kind of see, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. All right, so now that we've got our protagonist, can you take your story and boil it down to a single statement? That is the beauty of the thing that we at Fictionary call the skeleton blurb. And it answers these questions: who's our protagonist? What's their goal? And what's at stake? So we've identified our protagonist. We kind of figured out what they want to achieve. And what's at stake or what's at the goal is that they want to find, they have to get to that happily ever after moment. Remember, that's the whole key of a romance. We've got to have that happy ending. We've got to address the goal in a positive way. And we have to keep in mind what's at stake if they don't achieve that goal. So, why should you write a skeleton blurb? It's going to keep you focused. It's going to help you as you outline or edit to evaluate all your scenes. Do they belong in the story? Do they track with my story? Are they moving my story along? It's going to help keep you focused. Okay, so now let's talk about story arc scenes. Once you've identified what you want to accomplish in the goal, now you're going to come up with these 5 key scenes that must be in your story. They must do these things. They should have new information. You want to have something about the character or the relationship come out in these scenes. You want them to kind of change the direction. Consider this like pivot points to show growth or regression in the relationship. Tension. We got to have tension. We want to make our readers wonder what might happen. And also, we want to write these scenes from the protagonist's point of view because that's who your reader is most connected to. And they're going to have this kind of innate sense that these scenes are important. And so they need to be written from the protagonist's point of view. Why do we need these scenes? Remember, I told you that whole thing with the house. If you don't have that foundation, you might not have a story. So these 5 scenes are going to help you identify, yeah, okay, I think I've got this story. I can go ahead and write this. And as you get your story more fully fleshed out, you're going to use these scenes to kind of help you with your pacing. Make sure, okay, yeah, at the 15% mark, I have done this. At this percent mark, I have done this. It's going to really help you. Even if you are a discovery writer, better known as a pantser, you can at least do these 5 scenes and get yourself put in, set up for the proper pacing of your story and figure out what you want to do in your story. Okay, so let's talk about these story arc scenes. I'm going to give you an overview first, and then we're going to dive into each one of them. If you're not familiar with the 5 story arc scenes, I recommend these 2 books, and I will put them in the chat. I'm hoping that you can see, I can't see myself right now. So these are Secrets to Editing Success and Secrets to Outlining a Novel. And they're both written by our beloved CEO, Christina Stanley, and the fabulous Lucy Cook. So if you are a writer or an editor, these are musts for your library. They will help you a lot if you want to dive into this a little bit more. So let's talk about that inciting incident. It is the thing that shakes up your protagonist's everyday life. In other genres, like say a mystery, you can have like the murder happen before the story starts. But in a romance, you've got to have that meet cute happen on page. We have to let the readers see how they meet. So it's all about that meet, how they meet. And you can come up with a really, really great ways of how your characters finally meet. Then we get to plot point 1. And usually what this means is that the protagonist is accepting the story goal. They might be reluctant about it, but they still accept it. In a romance, what this means is that they're admitting to themselves, I think I feel attracted to this person. Maybe not happy about it. We'll talk more about that as we move along. The middle plot point is where your protagonist typically goes from being reactive to proactive. So in a romance, you want to show kind of a shift in the romantic relationship. Maybe you're throwing a curveball at them. Will they have a false victory or a false defeat? Is the romance going better than we think it is, or maybe it's not going so well? We're gonna talk about that. Then plot point two, for those of you who are coming from some other place where you've talked about this, it's the dark night of the soul. It's the all is lost moment. In a romance, it's almost always a breakup. And, but, you know, we want to first of all make this really, really bad so the readers think, whoa, there's no way that they're going to come back from this, right? But we also are going to get a piece of information here that's going to help the protagonist address the story goal. So they get something after the breakup that kind of like gives them this like aha moment. And then my favorite part, which is the happily ever after moment in the climax. This is where we declare our love and we kind of give that satisfying moment to our readers that this is the payoff that they've been waiting for. So, whether you are writing or outlining or you're editing, these are the first 5 scenes that you are going to work on. So, let's dive into the inciting incident. We call this the meet cute. It doesn't necessarily have to be cute or even pleasant. And this is where your love interests encounter each other for the very first time. Or perhaps it's the first time in a long time. Maybe they knew each other as children and now they're adults and they're like, oh, whoa, you turned out pretty cute. Um, this is where they encounter for the first time in your book. You want this to happen no later than the 15% mark of your story because you don't want to leave your readers, waiting too long to see the action getting started. So because I actually read a book recently. It was like, hello, when are they going to meet? I'm waiting, waiting. So don't make them wait too long because that's what, that's like probably the second favorite scene is like, oh, how are they going to meet? And how do I know who the two cute people are going to be that fall in love? So you want to do that.
Linda,
Yes.
Zuleika has a really good question that I'm going to
Oh,
just make you answer before you go too far into
okay.
these scenes, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are these phases a guideline for all types of romance, or can dark romances, enemies to lovers, slow burn, take another route? Dun, dun, dun. That's a good question.
It's a very good question. Um, I think that no matter what kind of romance you have, these scenes are going to do similar things. And I'm actually going to give you I'm going to give you some scenes here from some books that we've got that show you how the pacing can be really different. It can be a slow burn, or it can be like, whew, let's just get right out the gate and get into this romance. So, like for instance, we've got a book called The Wedding Date. And in The Wedding Date, the two people meet in an elevator in the very first scene of the book. And the sparks just fly. And he asks her to go to be his date for a wedding. His ex is getting married. And it's like boom, they just like hit the ground running. They are so attracted to each other that the speed in which this romance unfolds is very rapid in comparison to our other books that I'm going to talk about is just for the summer, one of the characters makes a post on social media about something and she responds to it. And so they meet kind of online. They don't meet in person. Their meet cute actually happens when they interact electronically. And then in the flat share, one of the characters puts up an ad to share his apartment and she responds. And they don't meet. As a matter of fact, they spend the first half of the book kind of just communicating via post-it note because they're in the apartment at different times of the day. So she leaves him a note, he sees it, he responds, she sees it. It's really cute. And then in the bodyguard, she gets assigned to protect, she's the bodyguard and she's protecting this movie star. And so there's all these different ways they can meet, and you can pace how you want that to progress at your own speed. So we'll see as we progress through these scenes that you can do this at whatever speed you want for your story. Now, the other thing that you want to do here is you just want to make sure that you're showing, you're showing that that it's obvious to the readers that these are the two characters that are going to end up together in your story. But you want it, and you don't want, like I say, you don't want to wait too long. All right, so let's talk about plot point one, and maybe this will help with that question. This happens about 20 to 30% into the book. And this is where your protagonist acknowledges, even if it's just to themselves, that, they're attracted to the other person. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be a physical attraction at this point. Maybe they're super if they're like super nerdy. Oh, they're like, super brainy and I really like that. Or maybe they both love music and they're attracted to that. There's something, some level there's an attraction. And so this is where there's interest in each other really sparks. Now, one of the other things though is that your character may not be excited about feeling this attraction. If they have this issue with love, like I said, I'm down on love. Oh, I hate that I'm attracted to this person. That can happen. Or like in the wedding date, hey, this is great. I'm thrilled. Let's just jump right in. They just dive right into the deep end. And that's fine. That's what you want to do with your story. Fine. You want to still show maybe some doubt, either about themselves or about the relationship at this point, because we don't want to just have it so that it's happening so fast that there's not enough places to have other external conflicts or even internal conflicts. Hold back a little bit here. And then you can also like show what they're feeling, like with internal monologue, thoughts, or maybe like they're showing like some subtle hesitation, nervous habits. Um, what does your protagonist want to accomplish here? Do they want to impress the love interest? Do they want to avoid them? Do they want to maybe better understand them? You want to show the attraction in some way so the reader picks up on it, even if it's only internal. Maybe they have a racing pulse. The love interest isn't going to see the racing pulse, but they're feeling it. Or maybe they're blushing. Maybe they're finding ways to accidentally touch each other. And it's okay for the attraction to be uneven. Like one is really one is really impressed. Oh wow, I'm ready to dive in. And the other one's just like, whoa, dude, calm down. We're not there yet. So you can have it be uneven, or you can have it be where they're both like, yeah, really into it, or maybe they're both like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this. That's up to you. That's all depending on your story. And you can, if in the wedding date, they're at their first kiss already. Plot point one. They're like I say, they're on the fast track. Then in just for the summer, they're just meeting for the first time in person. That's how the difference of the pacing is with these stories. In the flat share, Tiffy she's the female protagonist. She actually has written a letter to kind of support Leon, that's the roommate's brother, and it kind of really shifts their relationship because he sees how special she is, how kind she is, and it really deepens his attraction for her. And then in The Bodyguard, they kind of embark on this fake dating relationship because he doesn't want his family to know that he needs a bodyguard. So he wants to kind of insulate them from that. So we've got all these things here that happen, and it can be a very fast paced romance or a very slow burn or something in between.
And
Yes.
a question from
Okay.
Christina,
I,
not me, Christina, a different Christina. What if the protagonist is growing and learning while in the relationship? Oh,
oh, perfect.
awesome question.
That is an awesome question because that really is, to me, the crux of what happens in a romance. And if I haven't conveyed that, I apologize. The main goal in a romance is always for the character's got something that they have to get over. They've got a wound. Maybe they've been betrayed. Somebody's cheated on them, or maybe somebody passed away and they're just suffering. Or maybe they've just, like I say, they've grown up seeing their parents just like fighting, or their father was somebody who drank and gambled and cheated. And so they have this like either warped idea of what romance is and they don't trust it, or they're just down on it. And so, what we want to show as we go through the story is how does our protagonist heal and get past that misconception of, oh, I'm not good enough or I'm not smart enough, to being ready for love. They have to overcome that internal thing that is either a misconception or a wound, something that's happened to them. A lot of times you'll see protagonists that are like, oh, I'm so career focused that I don't have time for love. But if you peel back the layers, you will usually see that they're using that desire for a career as some they're covering up something. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not pretty enough. Or, like I say, I saw how my parents were. I'm just not dealing with that. And they have to heal that. They have to come to grips with that. And as they move through the story, that is the beauty of romance. It's one of the things I love about romance because we see our character grow. And it's kind of a circular thing. It's like love helps them to kind of heal, but then as they heal, they're more capable of love. So it's like one helps the other. And yes, there are so many layers involved, and you can really explore that. And if you take my 6-week class on romance, you'll see how we really kind of show how the characters react to things at the beginning of the book and how they kind of transform by the end of the book. And so that's like, thank you for asking that and reminding me that I did not focus on that enough. That's a great question. All right, so when we get to the middle plot point, as you might expect, it comes right around the middle of the book at the 40 to 50, 45 to 55% mark. And what readers are looking for here is they want to see a shift. They want to see the protagonist kind of moving from, being reactive to maybe taking charge. In a romance, what this means is you want to see some kind of a transformation in the relationship and in the character's inner self. So again, going back to that character growth, what are they learning about themselves? So what we typically see here is either a false victory or a false defeat. So it's something that gives the protagonist the wrong idea about how the romance is going. Maybe they think things are going really, really well, but they're lacking some really critical information. Like maybe she doesn't know that the male love interest is got works for the big evil, company that wants to destroy the downtown area of her town. She doesn't know that yet. So she's thinking everything's going really well and it's going to just, hit the fan. Or maybe one of them is already got a foot out the door because they think something is bad that is not true. They've got some kind of misconception. So you want to show something going on here that's going to move the characters either closer to or further away from their happily ever after moment because there's something that's happened. There's a transformation. They're either getting more serious or maybe they're starting to be on the decline. So you want to show maybe some significant relationship development here in one way or another. Maybe one of the characters, maybe your protagonist is deciding to show some vulnerability, deepening their trust. Maybe they're going from this friendship to something romantic. This could be the point where you show that shift. Or again, it could be where things are starting to kind of decline. The trust is eroding for some reason. They withdraw, they're backtracking. So if I look at our examples, for instance, Alexa, this is in the wedding date, she finds out that Drew might be cheating on her. He's not, but now she does. She's got the one foot out the door because she's thinking, oh boy, she's expecting him to be cheating. So that's where her mindset is. So this relationship that was like on the fast track to success is now all of a sudden hit this roadblock and it's starting to decline. Now, in these other books, because they are paced much more slowly, they're just having their first kiss here at the middle plot point in Just for the Summer. And the same thing in The Flat Share. First date, first kiss. And then in The Bodyguard, oh, I love this because it is so much about her character development. She starts to really trust him and she gets vulnerable and she shares things with him that she hasn't shared with anybody. And so we start to see this tremendous shift in their relationship because it starts off as just like this business arrangement. And now she's really starting to fall for him. So it's shifted from just this kind of business relationship to now a romance. So those are the kinds of things that you want to show here in this scene. Plot point 2. This is our dark, dark moment for the protagonist. In a romance, this is almost always a breakup, I mean, it can be a separation. I'm being deployed to Antarctica. You can't go with me. I'm, being transferred to, some place that you can't go. How you handle this is up to you, but it's a scene that's going to really make you want to make your readers think, whoa, there's no way they're coming back from this. The relationship's not going to survive. And what's happened here is that your love interests are failing to reach the goal in the right way. Maybe they've tried to kind of cut corners, take the easy path. They're avoiding dealing with that stuff inside. Oh yeah, okay. I'm not dealing with that. I'm so what's happened now is because they haven't done that, things are getting worse. All the actions that they've been taking since the middle plot point have kind of led to this disaster. And so again, you want to show some of the feelings that they're having. Now there's going to be heartbreak and loss or maybe anger or confusion. You want to focus on those things. But here's a really important thing that you're going to do in this scene. You're going to, after the breakup, give your protagonist that final piece of information that they need to move forward to the happily ever after goal. It may be that they have that epiphany about themselves. They're able to like get that last thing that they need to know before they, oh, you know what? I am worthy. Or, oh, you know what? This relationship is not like my parents. Or maybe they find out that, hey, so and so wasn't cheating on me, or so and so wasn't planning to tear the town down. There's some kind of information that they get here that gives them like the, oh, okay, now I know what to do. What happens in the sample books that we've got is in the wedding date, Alexa does break up with him. She's convinced that he's cheating. And so I mean, we think there's no way they're going to get back together. In Just for the Summer, Emma breaks up with this guy because she's got, I mean, talk about character growth. She's got so much baggage. Her mother abandoned her when she was a child, and then they reengaged as adults, and she's lied to her. And her trauma has made it so difficult for her that she acknowledges, I love you, but I can't, I'm not equipped to deal with her romance right now. And she breaks up with him, breaks his heart. In The Flat Share, Leon, who's the male love interest, he sees Tiffy's ex come and propose to her online, on live and live and on camera, and he thinks that she said yes. And the similar thing happens in The Bodyguard. Jack gets a proposal from his co-star. And so Hannah thinks, okay, well, this wasn't real. He wasn't being real with me. He never really cared about me. And so they all need to have that final piece of information. Alexa needs to find out he wasn't cheating on her. Emma needs to find out what she needs to do to fix herself. Leon needs to realize that Tiffy didn't accept the proposal. Same thing for Hannah with Jack. So they get that final piece of information. I'm checking all the questions here just to make sure I got everything. Oh,
Linda, I
thanks.
was going to leave them just to the end because we're already past time. So
Okay,
why don't you finish
one
and then
more.
we'll come back to the questions.
Okay, one more. I love you moment. Ta-da! This is what we've been waiting for. This is the moment your love interest declare, yes, I love you. It might be their first kiss. Maybe they get engaged. Maybe they get married. All depends on your pacing and what kind of story you want to tell. Remember how critical this is. We've got to have that happy ending. Here, what we have, Drew makes this grand gesture, and he says he flies from one city to another to see Alexa and convince her he loves her. And then we've got in Emma's case, she's gone off, she's gotten some counseling, she figures out she can handle it now, she's ready, she goes and confesses her love and hopes that she's not too late. Leon proposes in a post-it note. They've been communicating with post-it notes for a lot of the book. And then in the Bodyguard, they have a do-over date with, Jack, and they get to see that, yeah, he's for real. So that is all of our scenes. And so real quick, I'm just going to go over them real quick. We've got our inciting incident, which is our meet cute. We've got our plot point one, which is where they admit their attraction, the change in the direction in the middle plot point, the breakup, and then the happily ever after. So if you can identify the events that occur in these five scenes, remember, you just have to come up with a sentence or two. They meet at the airport. She realizes he's cute. that, things start to go south. Just come up with a single sentence or two, and then you've got your five scenes, and then you are well on your way to writing a story. And so, if you liked this and you're working on romance, join me for the next presentation of our 6 week course on romance. It's called From Sparks to Soulmates, and you can look for that in the Fictionary community. And thank you for coming. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop recording.